Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Episode 29 of No One Asked. Oh, muted that whole time. All right, we'll start that back over. All right, well, somehow my microphone went muted. All right, there you go. Live bloopers. Episode 29 with Brian Vieaux. Normally we do a GPT bio, but Brian is was our first guest.
That's right.
Of the show. He's also our first time second guest that we're bringing on. And I'm pretty convinced that like anybody who knows me knows Brian. So Brian actually comes with any introduction, but Brian has been around the industry for several decades, was a loan officer, was with Flagstar for a very long time. I think most famously and last known as the president of FinLocker, and extremely exciting to me is now the president of MISMO. And that's why we wanted to get Brian back on here. Brian and I have talked about this. I joked that Brian is the first employee of MISMO I've ever known. And I think all of us agree that I think it's a phenomenal hire for MISMO to bring Brian on, not only to steer the ship over there, but I think to bring added attention to MISMO. So, Brian, I'm going to skip through the normal, what's your background, how'd you get here? But what I'd love to jump into.
I have one question before we start. PK, is your arraignment right after this call? Is that what's going on?
It does look like.
I mean, there was a coach in Ann Arbor that had a similar look. Sorry.
We're going Michigan coach jokes already?
Sorry, guys.
I didn't know it was too soon or not for that.
Go.
He's either in a food court or in a courthouse. It's one of the two. We're not quite sure.
Apartment lobby.
Apartment lobby. So Brian, you've been around the industry for a long time, right? You were at FinLocker. How did it go down that MISMO was like, hey, Brian's our guy? Like, how did that relationship sort of begin, and what did that look like, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah. So, I've been around the industry for a long time, and I've been a member of the Mortgage Bankers Association for the better part of 30 years, at a number of different companies along the way, most recently FinLocker. And so I've always known about MISMO. I've known of MISMO. I sort of even understood a little bit about what MISMO did for the industry. But like you, Andrew, I knew very few of the people inside, the business. Last spring, I was having a conversation with a friend, as we all do, just catching up on things and just trying to kind of figure out some of the lay of the land. And it was mentioned that there was a role that was going to become available, in the coming weeks, we'll just say, and that they proceeded to, without describing the role and not even the company MISMO, they just described the attributes of what they were looking for. And it basically read back to what I had done at FinLocker, right? In terms of, being principally responsible for, revenue generation, business development, sales and marketing, but more than that, really elevating the brand of FinLocker in the market and doing it on a shoestring or no budget at times. And so, I learned a skill set while at FinLocker that I didn't have before. And that was, how to be more visible on things like we're doing here today and other places, but do it without spending a lot of dollars. And for MISMO, and you nailed it, Andrew, your perception or knowledge of or experience with MISMO is not different than a lot of the other people in the industry. And so as I started to, once the position got posted and I kind of figured out, okay, this is what's going on. I kind of had this introspective, time with myself where I was thinking about my 35-year career, 30 of it, almost 30 of it, 28 in production, mortgage proper, starting as a loan officer in the early 90s, and then running, some large production channels, most recently Flagstar, as you noted. So I did the whole lender thing, and I had a bunch of different roles and exposure in that space. And then I did the vendor thing. I hate the vendor term, but the tech partner, service provider thing for 6+ years at FinLocker. And, I'm probably closer to the end of my career than the beginning. And it just started to gel in my head. Like, what a cool way to have that last chapter be a real advocacy role, even though a lot of what I've done over my career is in advocacy for the industry, but doing it from a logo, from a company, is different than doing it absent the brand, and doing it, in an organization that exists by and for the industry. We're a nonprofit. MISMO's a nonprofit that exists by and for the mortgage industry. And so as I started to get my arms around that and my head around that idea, it just really started to gel. And so then I pivoted into, I was being vetted, no question about it. I wasn't the only candidate. There was several very qualified people that were interested in this position that went through the vetting process. But I was also vetting the opportunity, the job from my from my seat. And I talked to a lot of people, a lot of friends that are, either in the vendor side or the lender side, owner operators, et cetera. And nobody that I talked to has been able to say, and didn't say during that time, that their business would be better if there was no MISMO. So in other words, they actually said the opposite. If absent MISMO, they couldn't imagine how their businesses would be run, especially if they were, in the lender, in that lender space, having to have all these ad hoc, data sets and schemas and all that. But most people didn't understand that, they're part of the solution, meaning they're part of the economic engine that keeps MISMO running. And so I kind of felt like if I'm going to do something for this last stretch, I want it to be for the industry and I want it to make a difference. And I do think MISMO has made a quiet difference for a long time. And I think it's time to maybe come out of the shadows with MISMO. And I think in the particular time we're in, especially, with AI where it's at in mortgage, having a standards organization like MISMO help the industry and the regulators kind of work together on what responsible use of AI is going to look like across the entire ecosystem. I think we're well positioned for that, and the industry needs that assist. And I'll close with this on this topic. A lot of people assume MISMO is only for MBA member companies. So MISMO is wholly owned by the Mortgage Bankers Association, but right. MISMO exists, I'll say this over and over again, by and for the entire mortgage ecosystem. So you don't have to be an MBA member to get value from MISMO. Every player in this industry, wherever they sit, literally almost every day is touching MISMO somewhere in their work stream. So we're truly a mortgage ecosystem nonprofit.
Okay, so let me ask you the question that a lot of people won't ask. And I know I asked this last time that I'll be the chief idiot officer here. What is it that MISMO does, right? Like, I know the MISMO file, right?
Yeah.
In my entire career, all I've heard is, the MISMO 3.2 file or like stuff like that. But I've never, I just didn't, until last time we spoke, like, I had no idea, like, what the heck does MISMO actually do? Like, no,
you're not alone. And 6 months ago, I would have been kind of in a similar spot. I knew a little bit, but not the detail that I know today, of course. So MISMO is the Mortgage Industry Standards Maintenance Organization. So we are the standards body for housing finance, right? So MISMO, my small team, the team of us, the team of 6 of us, none of us on the team build standards. None of us come up with problem statements, and certainly none of us builds the solutions against those problem statements. MISMO exists as a body to facilitate the creation of standards, but I like to position it a little bit differently than that, because I think most people understand standards. MISMO 3.4 is like the most common, MISMO standard out there. All the U's that exist, in the GSEs, the most recent, the UAD 3.6.
Yep.
All of those U's are built on the MISMO model, so they're part of the MISMO standard set.
All right.
So what we exist to do is to create an environment, a place where industry problems can be presented, and then more importantly, for those problems that truly are industry problems and not one-off ABC Mortgages problem that they want MISMO to fix, but for problems that are truly industry-wide, and where creating solutions to those problems can help advance home ownership, lower the cost of home ownership for consumers, streamline processes for lenders, improve quality, all the stuff. When those things exist, then MISMO is the place where the industry comes together to create that solution. So real life, the mortgage compliance data set, MCD, is literally the most recent published standard. So that standard, or a problem, was presented to MISMO 3 years ago from a large lender who basically said, we're licensed in 50 states. We're subject to each state having its own requirement for this set of data in order to do loan audit selection, right? Sure would be great if there could be one agreed upon data set that a lender can create, and then that the states would all adopt. Almost at the same time that this problem statement came in from a lender, the Conference of State Bank Supervisors, CSBS, which basically is the trade association for all the state regulators, it through MBA. This is where MBA and MISMO are very collaborative and synergistic. Through MBA's advocacy relationship with CSBS, MBA learned that CSBS was looking to solve its own problem for its members, its 50 plus state regulators, who at the same time that this lender was saying this is a problem for the mortgage production side of the business, the states were going to the CSBS and saying, we need help, we need a more efficient process, we need to create some shared standards so that we can actually get some technology that can work for everybody.
Right.
And so the CSBS was introduced to MISMO through MBA, and it was literally like this perfect storm where the exact same problem existed for 2 different cohorts. And so MISMO became the place where lenders, legal compliance experts, technology companies, and regulators came together to agree on the problem statement, and then worked for 3 years to create what today is now the latest standard, which is the mortgage compliance data set. So what happens next, which I think is the power of this particular standard, is CSBS will start driving adoption of the use of this MCD by all of its state members. And it'll take some time, to do that. But also there's technologists that understand that there's this uniform set of data that they can now go build a product or products around to help both lenders and the regulators attack the same set of data, the same information. And so if you imagine a world, let's just say 2 years from now, where we're at, 70% or 75% adoption of the use of this MCD by the states, if I'm a 20, 30, 50 state lender, I probably have less human capital pointed at creating and chasing data requirements, and that human capital can now be put to use at higher value work, like actually mitigating risk. And so like there's this quantifiable, tangible return on the lender's investment, small investment in MISMO that they get to realize through this one example I'm describing, which is one of 200 data standards, that have been created and are maintained by MISMO today.
Right, because to your point, like I can only imagine what the world would be like if there was nothing, right? And it's
Right.
like, how do we even? I mean, it's. I don't know if this is a silly comparison or metaphor, but it's almost as if like a country didn't have like a national language.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
how on God's green earth do you communicate like at that point in time? How long has MISMO been around, by the way?
So we're in our 26th year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's older than P. So MISMO's older than PK. We've established that. All right, cool.
Yeah, there we go.
Now I'm 27.
All right. Yes, there you go. So you mentioned, you gave the example of a country not having a kind of a national language. Mike Ising, I think it's Ising. He's the Chief Compliance and Risk Officer at Ruoff Mortgage.
Yeah, we just met. We're having lunch
nice.
Week after next.
We're
in the same neighborhood. So
right on. Well, he did a post earlier this week or maybe last week and basically described, MISMO as the Bluetooth for the mortgage industry.
I saw that post. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, that's a cool one. So I'm reusing that. That's now in my talk track.
Yeah. No, it makes all the sense in the world. I'm waiting to see if PK and Chris have questions. But.
Yeah, I was going to say, Brian, I know you just explained the MCD. I was on that 4-hour call that happened 2 weeks ago, I think it was.
Yeah. 4 hours?
Yeah, it was really good.
A kickoff tech sprint for this MCD.
Gold mine. I had a lot of ideas there. So thank you. One thing I think, just for like, I guess the folks that are watching and then also for us, if you could just cover like, you explained how like the MCD does add value, but like what is like, I guess like the current state or like the before state actually look like? Could you actually, because I've heard from folks about how it's a lot of paper chasing. It's a lot of trying to satisfy like 20 different, like for example, one auditor might say, hey, we want this policy to state XYZ. Another one might say we needed to do X, another ABC, whatever. And so you're just doing a lot of paper chasing and pushing versus like actually mitigating risk. I think if you can just elaborate on what that current state looks like, that'd be interesting to hear.
Yeah, I'll paint this picture, and it's principally, I think, correct. But I've never sat in the shoes of a lender's, as a compliance manager at a lender. So, but I've heard the horror stories. So, imagine if you're just a 10-state licensed lender, and whatever your audit cycle is, maybe it's one every other year for each state or whatever. But right now, absent any uniformity, each state is left on its own to send a data request or a checklist, whatever you want to call it, to the lender. And for the most part, they're all asking for the same thing, but they want the columns labeled differently, the cells, labeled differently so that they can ingest it into their systems of record, right, from the state perspective. So the chaos today is you're literally, fielding these requests. And if you're, 20, 30, 40, 50 states, it's probably an ongoing evergreen
full-time job.
Yeah, exactly. And so not only are you fielding the initial request, but inevitably because you're creating ad hoc reports upon every request, there's probably errors and omissions in the data when you're producing it. So now you've got to pick up the file and you're getting stipped for data that you forgot or it was mislabeled or what have you. So that's the chaos that kind of exists today. And from the regulator side, I can't remember if they went into this detail, PK, on the call, but there was one of the calls I was on with one of the state regulators basically said that a simple independent mortgage banker audit it's probably $7,000 to $10,000, and that cost gets billed to the lender.
Right.
And by their estimate, at least half of that cost is the upfront cost of getting everything ready to do the actual audit work. And more often than not, the auditors have less time to crack files and actually, audit.
They can't even do their proper checks either.
That's right, because they're just chasing data and documents. So that's kind of the current state.
I was going to say, if I remember correctly, like that price actually, or that cost, the $8,000, I think that it's a 3x in like the last five years or something like that. It was kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I should
they're just completely underwater.
And I should also mention, because this is just a great example of the business, the industry through MISMO and MBA, and the regulators, the government, if you will, through CSBS coming together. Because CSBS, they actually have this MCD is part of a string of initiatives under their Catalyst initiative. And so this is really kind of the tip of the spear in terms of what CSBS is working on for its members, for the state regulators. And there's a world of possibility where a few years down the road, as that Catalyst initiative continues to gain steam, that if I'm in Michigan, if I'm a mortgage company in Michigan, but licensed in 10 other states, that the work that my main state auditor does can be used to satisfy these other state audits. That's like, part of the vision down the road that CSBS and its members have is, because a lot of times they're doing the same exact audit work, in
right.
multiple states.
Well, I remember when I was, this was a very long time ago. This is when PHH still had like their giant campus, and was it Mount Laurel? And I remember it was my first visit out there. I still had hair. That's how long ago it was. And they were taking me on a tour of their building, and somebody goes, "Oh, and this is our regulator floor." And I was like, what do you mean your regulator floor? And they were like, "This is where we house all the regulators." And they have their own break room. Like literally they had their own break room.
Yeah.
That's how many state regulators visited there. And I mean, you do the math, right? And you've got people who are spending, well over $250,000 a year, right? Just in state regulation. Let's all be abundantly clear. That all goes back to the borrower.
Yeah,
like ultimately, right? At the end of the day, all of these things fall back onto the borrower. And it's amazing to me that nobody has come up with, it's like, Brian, when you and I were kids, like if you wanted to apply to a college, you had to individually apply to each one, right? You had to get the application. It was different for every other university. And now my son, who's applying to college, he fills out one application and it goes out to, I forget how many universities that he can up to, right? Yeah, it's the MISMO of college, right? And so like, it's maddening to me that, listen, I'm okay. I mean, I don't know if I'm okay. I go a little bit back and forth with like patchwork regulation versus, federal regulation. Anybody who follows me on LinkedIn knows I have a very big opinion on this when it comes to AI and some of the stuff that's currently going on, which I'm very conflicted with. But so it's like, it's one thing if we want to say, okay, the states can have their own regs, but for God's sakes, why don't we have a platform where I am, to your point, I'm an originator in Detroit and I'm licensed in 30 states, and I upload one thing and one thing only, and that goes out to all of the states, and the states audit, based on that data, and I'm good to go. But
I like it.
Sounds like that's the direction you're headed.
That's it.
So now, is somebody working on a platform? Like, I know you're working on the standards.
Yeah, there may be. I'm sure there'll be some, technologists that are working on a solution. I couldn't tell you right now. I'm not aware of anybody.
There you go, Mace. There's your next idea.
Yeah. So, question to break it down for me, like I'm the boomer here. which Andrew will love to do. But so how come the MISMO file wasn't enough? Are we talking about like more like an export? So like, you know, let's say I was going to have 1,000 loans, right? And 1,000 loans come, you know, New York wants them, and 1,000 loans from California, right? 1,000 separate MISMO files.
When you say MISMO file, you're talking about like the application,
standard. The MISMO standard, yeah.
Well, that's one of 200 standards.
Okay. So now I was just wondering why they didn't take what I would consider like your standard MISMO file. Like if I was going to take one from a point of sale into Encompass, like I've got a file format that I'm used to using. Why weren't the regulators?
That's only part. Yeah. If you think about it from an audit perspective, that's just one part of what makes up the entire loan itself, right? So you have all the disclosure that happens after application, and all the data that's built around that. You have obviously
and
collateral valuation.
Profitability isn't in there either. That's true. Okay.
Yeah, it's funny because most people think of, oh yeah, I know MISMO. MISMO's the loan application, the 3.4. I'm like, I remind people it's literally one of 200 artifacts that, you know, have been created through MISMO and are maintained.
Got it. So I guess my question was like, why can't there be one to rule them all?
Yeah, good question. I mean,
maybe new requirements keep coming.
Yeah, there's the set of standards that exist in mortgage origination. So the 3.4 is probably the most prevalent. Then you have a set of standards that are around collateral, all the UAD standards that exist around the collateral, you know, the Uniform Appraisal Data Set. Then you have the UCD, the Universal Closing Data Set, right? And then you've got a servicing data set. And then within the servicing data set, you have an onboarding data set. So I suppose if someone were to, you know, wire it all up, you know, I would tell you that, Tom, this would be a good exercise for you. If you went to MISMO Connect, which member companies of MISMO have access to MISMO Connect, you would see the life of loan schema, which has in that schema, it has all every standard is in there. So you literally could, you know, wire up to that and kind of build the master brain, if you will.
Got it. So it looks like PK was pre-arraignment, had his arraignment, and is now in the waiting area to get.
Booking room. Where are you?
That's hotel. Sorry, not hotel. Apartment lobby. It was super loud outside, so I was like, let me go inside.
Where are you? Phoenix or? What?
Oh yeah. I'm back home in Arizona for the month.
Oh, and your parents kicked you out of the house?
No, I didn't want to go home.
I hope they watch. For once, PK's probably glad they don't watch.
PK has reached the age where you're like, I'm not staying at my parents' house for the holidays. You fancy.
Brian, so real quick, so you mentioned you don't know the technology vendors that are if there are working on solutions and things like that. So how do people get involved? Like the MCD call, it sounded like there was a lot more opportunity. It's like still kind of in the works.
Yeah.
It's not like, you know, I think MISMO as an organization is working on setting the standards, but then for the standards to be adopted, technology companies like us have to actually like go out there and build solutions for the lenders and the state regulators and things like that. I don't think that's all built out. That's going to come in the future.
I would say real quick on that, just to because I do know some of the companies that are working like in the LOS space. You know, the obvious, the obvious players already have a roadmap to build the MCD for its clients. And I think it's not speaking out of school, but on the call, ICE, basically said they've got their roadmap is already underway to support MCD. I think Wilco was another one that stated in the call. You guys should have John on the show from a compliance. John Herring, what a wealth of knowledge around compliance, loan level compliance, corporate level compliance. It's amazing. So you've got the LOSs, you've got some of the compliance platforms, right, that are already working towards readiness. But I have to believe the door's kind of open for somebody new to come in, and I don't even know what they would do, but there's something to be done there, with this new standard to support the regulators.
It seems like a central repository, like a self-reporting central repository, right? And I'm just going to use PHH, where I'm PHH, and I can just publish everything into one central site, and I can just grant access to all 32 states that I'm licensed in, and they can go and grab all of the information that they need or want to audit. And you could even manage, questions, associated to the audit, like right then and there. I mean, one of the things, and this is going way back. I think it was, oh gosh, what's the name of the company? Now I can't even think of them. Indian-based company. They acquired Opus Capital Market Consultants.
Oh,
Wipro. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry. I know, like, we were talking to PHH about, like, how do we create some sort of a self-reporting mechanism that, like, they could actually just be more proactive with the states, because again, they were spending. I mean, I don't even want to know how much PHH was spending. I guarantee it was seven digits that they were spending between the lawyers and the underwriters and the everybody to get this information. It just seems horribly inefficient. And so I understand the LOSs and all the compliance companies are getting ready for those standards, but what is the mechanism of delivery to make this get more efficient? So that we cut down on the misuse, if you will. And this is a great opportunity for AI on a platform like that, right? Like the ability to answer questions different ways, leveraging AI against a data set, is actually hugely powerful to do. So if the state of Connecticut is asking the same question as the state of Michigan, but they're asking it in slightly different ways, you can actually leverage a model to look into that data set, leverage those questions, and be able to give the appropriate style response to the same question.
So the Midwest would be like, give me your loans over here. And then the Southern guys say,
what was that accent?
We need this pool of loans, y'all.
That was the weirdest Midwest accent I've ever heard.
I don't know. What is that? Wisconsin, anyway.
Maybe you were trying to do like a Minnesota,
Minnesota.
Peninsula,
yeah.
But going back to PK's question, because I didn't answer the second part. So the tech sprint that you sat in on December 3rd was one of three sessions, if you will. That one was virtual. And by the way, what was really cool about that event, we had over 550 registrants. And I think at any given time, there was like 220 some people that were on.
I think more.
Maybe more, yeah.
Yeah.
But the coolest part that I thought was that at any given time, there was like 75 or 100 regulators that stayed on the whole time. And so when you talk about adoption, and in this case, adoption is the regulators, the states adopting the standard, that's when the value is going to be, realized. They were there. They were in the session. So that was session one. The second leg of this three-legged stool is going to happen in conjunction with the MISMO Winter Summit, which is January 12th through the 14th down in Amelia Island, Florida. And so there's a 3-hour in-person workshop that's happening down there on January 12th. And basically coming out of the December 3rd session, CSBS published 3 problem statements that are going to be kind of the priority. And then the workshop in January is going to drill into those 3 problem statements. And then the third leg of the stool happens in February at the NMLS conference. And CSBS is then inviting any tech company that is planning to build around this data set or develop around this data set to come in and present. They don't have to present a product because it's not realistic that they'd build something, but present the screenshots or clickables or whatever,
mock-ups or whatever.
Yeah, and so it's a cool way for, I think, some technology companies that to kind of test the water on some ideas before you go spin a lot of cycles on product development. And they'll be able to present those at that NMLS conference. And then adoption's kind of already underway. We have two lenders who share an LOS provider. That LOS provider's already in a spot to produce the MCD, and so there's going to be some early testing with one of the compliance platforms around that. So that the next 6 months is all about testing and driving adoption. And I think we have some real traction on this thing, as we hit the second half and certainly Q4 of 26.
Brian, is there anybody building tech for the regulators? I feel like the obvious place to build tech is for the lenders to be able to deliver and manage the kind of inbound requests from the regulators. But who's building the tech for the regulators?
Yeah, I don't know who the who's are, but there certainly there are
people looking into that.
But I think this maybe is a cheat to this question that someone wanted to stump me with later. What around this particular topic, what's probably had to happen at the tech level for these states is more of a custom development for each state. And now you can actually get your arms around something you can scale. You can build and scale, across the 50 states.
Which is, that's like herding butterflies with a blow dryer. It is, right? Like, this is always, it's one of the funny things when everybody's like, oh, AI is taking over the world tomorrow, which please, real quick, as a public service announcement, people please stop writing posts based on shit Elon Musk says in interviews with Joe Rogan where he's high. I saw a bunch of this last week about how we're all losing our jobs, like, next month or something. And I'm like, all right, slow down. But municipalities or local governments are going to be a big slowdown on a lot of this because, it's easy to go sell, not easy, I shouldn't say that, but it's one thing to go sell, a product to a group of lenders, right? Or members of the MBA or things of that nature. But when you are having to go to 50 different states, right? And like, that is a daunting task. We're doing some sales into municipalities right now, and like, I'm still trying to learn the inner workings of how you even do that. It's going to be interesting to see how that goes. And it's definitely, I think, organizations like yourself who can help to facilitate those conversations to get us to something that really helps the lenders on the state reg situation. Yeah.
I think of you think about some of the pieces of our business that are still a little slowed down from fast and rapid innovation are the ones that require on those local municipalities. So like the whole title industry still is in a lot of ways hamstrung by, the small county in northern Michigan that, everything's hand stamped and delivered, So.
Yeah. And probably will be for another 10 years.
Right.
So it's getting everything digital. I remember, I don't even know whatever happened to that, but there used to be there was a thing where all municipalities were mandated to have like all tax and title online by, X date. And I don't think that ever actually came to fruition. I don't know that I don't know that it certainly has not happened yet. Chris, you look at the question.
Yeah. So Brian, 30 years in the industry, and then the last 7 have been at FinLocker, right? What's it like for you going from originating to then tech guy and then to standardization guy? Like, what was the biggest surprise and adjustment for you for the last like 2 months?
I'll start by saying I think I was very fortunate that before making the move to FinLocker, you know, I had a really good 9-year run at Flagstar, which, you know, was sneakily, a top 5 TPO shop in the industry. And so if you think about that business is B2B. And so when I made the move to FinLocker, which is B2B, I already had a lot of the relationships and at least the knowledge of and some knowledge of me making that move. So it would have been infinitely harder to make that move if I was coming from retail where, you know, it was direct to consumer, obviously. So I think, not that I ever thought of that stint at Flagstar as setting me up for something down the road. It turns out it did. And then having to do what I did at FinLocker, which was really, you know, like I said, a bootstrap company. So in every regard, you know, especially marketing and brand building, we just didn't have a lot of resources. So it was left to just a few of us and mostly me to do that work for that brand. And it's frankly, you know, it's probably, I don't think I'm on LinkedIn the way I am today if I didn't spend 6 years doing what I did at FinLocker. I'll just say that. And so all that work then led to, you know, what MISMO needed at this time and place, which was someone to help elevate the brand and awareness of the value from MISMO. So I've already derailed the question, but I think I'm going to go back to it. It was like this very fortunate set of roles that I had that each build upon each other and led to where I am today. The biggest surprise for me is, so here's what I tell people. You know, first thing they're asking is, how do you like it? I'm like, well, it's everything I expected. And I'm telling people it's like everything I expected and 20 times better. And the better is because of the people. So the small team that is MISMO, the 6 of us, you know, the team that I'm a part of now, these are people that are in it for the mission. Like they truly care about the mission that is MISMO and what we're doing as an organization for the industry. And then we're wrapped around these resources of MBA, which is another, you know, group of people that care and have a mission for the industry. And then the real special part of MISMO are the hundreds of people from industry that make up all these work groups that volunteer time, expertise, energy to do the hard work to create standards. The MCD didn't happen in a conference room over a weekend. It was a 3-year cycle to get to an artifact that was ultimately voted and approved and published as a standard. And so I underestimated how much the industry pours into MISMO, but in the same breath, I also underestimated, in the grand scheme of things, how small the population of the community is relative to the entire industry. And I share that to say we need more people to get involved and to come in to get involved to literally leave this thing better than they found it. And this is a place to do that. I mean, I know people get behind, advocacy, and they're going to, go to April, they're going to go to the advocacy conference. That's awesome. That's needed. We have to do that. But even that's a small population of the entire industry. And I think this is a space, especially with where we are with AI, that I think everybody can have some influence in what our industry looks like from a data technology and then, artificial intelligence perspective going forward.
So that begs the question for those who are listening, and I'm going to just stick with the technology side. How do technology partners get involved with MISMO?
Yeah, so that's actually the easier part to explain. I'm glad you asked that first, because we're a membership organization, and membership for MISMO there's a couple verticals in membership. One is the non-lender vertical. So all of you all and myself in my past life were in that non-lender
Yep.
membership vertical. That's pretty straightforward. It's membership. Our membership fee at the low end is $5,000 a year for a company, and there's some benefit for that, including access to MISMO Connect, that's where, as a technologist, when you have access to MISMO Connect, you see the schemas getting built in real time. And so if you think about it from getting some visibility into what's being worked on in terms of these standards, and more importantly, is there product opportunity on top of these standards? You can actually see these things get built in real time through Mortgage Connect or MISMO Connect. If you're not a member, you don't have access to that, so you just have to wait for the final, publishing of the standard. But it also gives you a seat at the table if you want it, where you can actually influence standards and give perspective from your particular vantage point in that process. So that's, and that the higher end range, some of the bigger, technology partners you'll see are in at higher levels, and their benefit is the same. They get access to the same MISMO Connect platform. They may get some added benefit in terms of visibility and exposure, at some of our events. We have the ability to, for technology companies and any kind of vendor, to sponsor a specific work group, which is a pretty cool way to get exposure and be involved in a process. So that's the non-lender side. So again, I say that's the easier side. I'm glad we asked that one first.
Yeah, you explained the lender one to me, and this one kind of shocked me.
The lender side, in 2021, the Innovation Investment Fee, IIF, was created, and IIF is the lender side of MISMO membership, and so each lender is assessed an annual invoice, and that invoice is basically 75 cents per loan, and that's the lender's innovation investment fee into the industry, IIF.
Yep.
And that invoice is delivered it's delivered by MERS. It's not a MERS invoice. They act as our agent, but we use the MERS registry as the tracking, the counter for the number of loans per lender. Makes sense, right?
Makes sense, yeah.
And so MERS sends out their invoice to lenders, and then a week or two later, or whatever the timing is, on our behalf, on MISMO's behalf, MERS will issue the IIF invoice to each lender. Today, all caps, today, that the IIF is a voluntary invoice. So lenders, are basically volunteering to pay their fair share of industry innovation through the IIF. The good news is, based on a voluntary, model, we've got a pretty good participation. But one of the reasons why,
will you say what the percentages? I'm gonna ask. You don't have.
It's half-ish. We'll just leave it there.
That's a little disappointing, folks. I'm gonna say I'm a little disappointed in all of you all. Come on, do a little bit better. I'm not expecting 100%.
Well, I think in fairness, Andrew, we as an organization, MISMO, haven't done the best job of building better awareness around not just the IIF, but the value that you get with that.
Right.
Like, I would challenge probably 90% of the lenders, the IMBs out there, just on the MCD opportunity alone, they probably have like a 200% ROI opportunity just on that one alone.
Right. Yeah.
Once that thing's fully adopted. So part of I'm so grateful that you all have me on here today. This is part of what I'm doing in my first call it several months is I'm basically on this AAA initiative: awareness, adoption, alignment. Awareness is having these conversations. It's some of the thought leadership papers that I'm putting out through the different media partners. It's my own MISMO Mic'd Up podcast, which I need to get you guys on. it's all about awareness right now to raise the visibility of MISMO outside of the MISMite community, the people that already understand it, but getting into the C-suites, getting into the places where in February when those invoices are coming in, hopefully someone's watched this episode and they're like, oh yeah, I get it. The MCD alone is worth more than pays for this IIF. So awareness is a huge thing right now, just building awareness, talking about the value of MISMO, asking for more participation. Adoption is the second A, and adoption has its own two legs. The first adoption is pretty straightforward. Is we have a standard. We need technologists to adopt that standard in their product, in their workflow. We need lenders to adopt a standard, and so the first adoption is what I would call stuff that has to happen in order for someone to get benefit. They have to use this. They have to do something with this to get a benefit. I actually believe that as that type of adoption gains momentum, it creates a flywheel with awareness, because now you've got internally adoption kind of hopefully leads to some efficiency or cost save. And so as you're starting to measure, where your IIF goes and what you get for it, that just kind of builds that flywheel effect there. And then as more people hopefully talk about where they're having success because they've adopted these standards, again, that creates that flywheel around awareness. The second part of adoption is what I'll call hidden adoption, where MISMO is used every day, all day long, and it just doesn't get credit for it. And the use, in the GSEs is a great example. All the uniform standards that are created between Fannie and Freddie under FHFA, those are all MISMO model standards that every loan, touches MISMO every day in that regard. So those are kind of hidden. We need to uncover those, and again, that builds that flywheel. And then the last A is alignment. I already talked a little bit about aligning the value as a lender that I get because of what these standards mean to efficiency and cost save. And so I can align that value directly to what I'm asked to fund through my IIF, my investment fee. But the other alignment, the perfect example is the MCD, where MISMO has aligned the regulator oversight side of the world with the lender. And so we're completely aligned in the creation of this standard, so that once it's in place and adopted, we shouldn't be looking over our shoulders questioning, what a regulator is going to do with this data, because we're all part of the construction of the standard.
So we'll have a few minutes left before we jump into the gotcha question. Are there any things that you guys are doing right now or beginnings of discussions around any sort of standardizations when it comes to AI in the space?
So that area is a little tougher, because I don't know that there's a data standard per se that you can create, but I will tell you that, and this is better than anybody on this call probably, that the models AI only are as good as the inputs, and so standards can only improve the quality of the input. So
100%.
There's an argument that the standards have never been important if we're going to rely and lever up AI at a greater level going forward. But what we are doing very specifically around AI from a guardrail perspective is MISMO's partnered with the Residential Board of Governors, RESBOG, which is the MBA's kind of governing body. So RESBOG is made up of lenders and vendors and others in the industry, MBA members, and RESBOG sets priority for MBA. And RESBOG's top priority for 2026 is around specifically working with the regulatory community on establishing, what the guardrails are for responsible use of AI, so that if, absent a real federal, kind of rule, if you will. Can we get as many of the players together and agree, in terms of, right now there's a little bit of vagueness on what's in and out of scope as it relates to AI. I mean, if I'm using the calculator app on my phone, is that AI? I mean, sort of. And so, right now we just have to create this set of guardrails that, again, is agreed upon by the players, the lenders, and the referees, the regulators. And I think that's a place where MISMO can play a role in that. I don't think we set any standard or guideline, but I think we can help facilitate those interactions.
Yeah, and I think it's extremely needed. I mean, I did a post, I guess it was late last week, about what the current administration is, and my opinion of David Sachs is fairly well known. I don't like him. I just don't think he's done shit. He's had a year to come up with the AI policy, and they've produced nothing other than this. The states shouldn't be able to do anything. Like, that's their AI policy currently. I think we'll do a special episode. Actually, I've talked to Wendy Lee and John Levinek to come in and do a special episode just on AI regulation. But I think it is important within the NBA or some faction to come up and start suggesting some guardrails, because what I'm most concerned about for originators is that some may ignore the states, follow the Fed, and then you get a new administration in, and you're up shit creek because you decided that I was just going to go with what this one administration said. And it turns out that the blocking of state law regs was illegal. And the next thing you know, you're in violation of Colorado SB 24-250, which is kind of the hot one. That's the big one. And that's the one, by the way, that applies the most to originators, right? And it's why, I wrote the post on that reg specifically, because I'm very worried that lenders are going to ignore that reg. And I think you will be in a very, very bad place, potentially in, call it 2-3 years, whatever, from that perspective. So, yeah, I'm hoping that we do see some, at least just some advice come out from the NBA saying, hey, this is what we think is probably prudent for you to consider when you're utilizing AI, particularly when it's facing the borrowers. Yeah. All right, so the question from Lori Helms last week, which I may twist this a little bit, because Lori's question was, how do you balance standardization versus customization?
Well, we don't have the choice. We don't, at MISMO, customization is not an option. If customization is designed where this is for one particular entity.
Right. So my question though is what is the, just give a snippet, of what the battle looks like sometimes, where there are people, I have to imagine that you do get people who are like, no, damn it, we want it this way, even though that's different from what the standard, is that's being set forward.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had to get involved yet, but I'm sure it's coming soon. But there's work groups that could be 50 people in the group representing 50 different companies, and the best work groups have all the as much of the players involved as possible. And I think what the MISMO facilitator's job is to be neutral and not, we're not building for a particular product or logo or brand. We're truly building for industry. And so, we remind folks, through the process that that's what we're here for. But if you get if there's a work group that is built and it is only representing a small segment of industry, a standard could still get created, but it's going to make it infinitely harder for that to get adopted. And so, ultimately, if you create a standard, you're doing it to get adoption. And so the work to have the group be as comprehensive as possible, early as possible, is well worth the investment because it's only going to help you with adoption down the road. So we're not in the customization game at MISMO. We can't be. What I would tell you is that if the standards are the standards, it sounds like a football coach. The standards are the standards. Your customization is what you build on top of the standards. That's your secret sauce from a product perspective.
And I think something to share is MISMO does allow extensibility. So even in the MISMO file, there might be a special attribute you can attribute to there that are more, California has one extra thing. Obviously, it's going to be that way, right? Yeah. And then the MCD format, there might be there's attributes that you can extend it on.
That's a great point.
All right. So to wrap things up, Brian, you have the question for the next guest, which we are off next week. We're taking the week off for Christmas week, largely because I'll probably be skiing somewhere in Michigan on the 23rd. So your question is for Daniel Gottsman from Elphi, and if I butchered that name, I apologize, Daniel.
So I know Dan. He and I have talked before, and my question to Dan is, because I'm almost 99.5% certain he came into mortgage without any mortgage background. I think it was like right out of school. So my question is,
you're correct.
Dan, what did you see in this industry, and specifically, what did you see that led you to build Elphi?
All right, there you go. That's a solid question. I like it. Yeah, I believe he did come straight from MIT into the space, correct?
Yeah.
I think John Levenick's an advisor over there as well. So, hey, Brian, thank you so much. Always appreciate the time. This has been super informative for me, if nothing else. So, we don't do a very good job of clipping these up often, but this one I'm going to have to, because I think there's some clips in here that are important to kind of get out that'll give people snippets they just want to watch and just understand a little bit more about what MISMO does. So thank you very much for everything you and the team are doing, because it is critical for the industry. There's no question about it. So.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate the opportunity.
And